Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining. I am joined today with the legendary founder and CEO of Y42, Hung Dong. Hung, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks for having me. It's quite late right now in Berlin, where I'm based. It's all dark outside, but yeah, nevertheless, I'm very excited to be joining you all on this call.
Nice. So, can you give us a little background about yourself and what you've been up to?
Yes. So my name is Hung, as Jeff already introduced me. I've actually met Jeff not too long ago, roughly. I think the first time we talked was roughly like 4 months ago for the very first time.
Yeah,
Or
maybe like
maybe-
September
yeah,
range. Yeah.
Yeah, September 6 months ago, yeah. And then we met the very first time at Coalesce in person in San Diego and had a great time together, couple of beers. And now, yeah, happy to be on this podcast, first of all, or yeah, on this live stream. So wanted to say that first before I introduce myself. But now let's get to my introduction. Quite simple. I started my career in data. I was actually a certified Tableau consultant coming out of university.
Oh, I didn't know that. Very
Yes.
cool.
So yeah, I really learned data structure to like with Tableau. I think it was such a great tool to teach me all of that back in the days. And that was like, a decade ago. And I studied statistics in my master's. And yeah, my parents, they're PhDs in statistics. My father's a professor in statistics. So data is really, all I know. And yeah, that's why I also started my career in the data space and doing that for 2 years. I actually started my first data company in 2016. And that was a data company in the live event industry. So meaning, at some point, we analyze anything from Ed Sheeran concerts to Justin Bieber to data from big arenas and festivals. And so at some point, 1/3 of all live events in Europe, they were using our software. And I sold that company end of 2019 to a German Fortune 100 company. And at the time I was just 28. So I got straight back into the game and I started what is now Y42. And Y42, we started out actually as a no-code, low-code data tool on top of the data warehouse, like BigQuery, Snowflake. And the reason we did that is because I had such a good understanding of a persona that is not that technical, like the event organizers who happen to have a lot of data, but they're not that technical. And we wanted to bring the same philosophy to the rest of the industry, to other industries than the live event industry. And so that's how we started Y42, but it has changed a lot ever since. By now we've built a very professional tool for professional people working with data. And that's in a nutshell my story.
Awesome. So I'm actually interested to learn more about your experience analyzing the data for the concert venues and for like the performances. So can you tell us a little bit more about like what were the KPIs or like what was the analysis? What was kind of the value that you were trying to drive with data there?
Yes, classic ELT pipelines on top or ETL on top of actually a Postgres database, not BigQuery. I was actually one of the first BigQuery users. I mean, it just became popular at the time around 2016, but we still use Postgres for it. If the data volume is not that big, that Postgres is doing the job. Like,
oh yeah. It's my favorite, like quick and easy database. Actually, now I'm just starting to get into DuckDB, but Postgres was my favorite quick and easy database before that. But now DuckDB, I don't know if you've used it, but it's so easy. It's like pip install DuckDB and you have a little database going.
Yes. No,
Tell us more about what value the data was bringing to you or to the clients, and like what was it actually used for?
Yes. So as I've said, it's a very simple verticalized app. So we ETL data from marketing sources like Facebook, from ticketing sources, where you sell your tickets online, like Eventbrite and whatsoever. And most importantly, the second part of it is we build out surveys to send out to people after the event. And so, for example, we have festivals that are 60,000 attendance. And so if you kind of tell them you can win free tickets for next year, roughly 30 to 40% would actually answer a 15-minute long survey in order to just win tickets for next year. And so
Nice.
all of this data, and you combine this data, and it's very interesting that you would think that it's easy, you would think that it's easy to analyze these events, but actually it's quite complicated because the data quality is very low. Because let's assume, right, we're going to a festival together. This year I would buy a ticket for you, and then next year you would buy tickets for me. And the ticketing provider, and I would buy it on a different platform than you. And so the event organizer, it's very hard for them to track, have you been at this event ever before? What's retention? What's my return rate? Actually, it's impossible to figure that out just because you cannot map the emails. Maybe one ticketing platform doesn't ask for the other person's email or identity and so on. And so the only way how you can assess whether you have been there is to actually ask a multiple choice question in a survey. Have you been at this festival before? If yes, which years? And then you do a multi-select, and then you can build out a cohort analysis. Otherwise, it's impossible. And so one of the core things that we analyzed was return, how can we get people to return, right? And the whole SaaS industry is all about, net revenue retention. How do, if you don't have people returning at least 60%, a festival will die. And it's funny because the reason is also every time you return to a festival, you're actually bringing in one or two people. And without that network effect, a festival will spiral down and just die. And so they will do anything to make you come back and return. And one of the big levers is that you're really satisfied with your experience. And so we analyze a lot, we analyze two angles. One is return rate, and really figure it out, how many people return, how many do you recommend, what's when is it their first time or not? And then we're trying to find parameters to optimize for that. And one of the analysis that we do is a satisfaction analysis. We ask, have you been satisfied with, the bands, the sanitary, the camping, and so on. And one of the insights that I always like to share is the sanitary is, if you do an NLP analysis on that data, everybody would always complain, the toilets are horrible, the showers, I hate it. But if you run that regression analysis, a very simple logistical regression, you will see that it does, there's no significance whether people will return or not if their satisfaction with the sanitary actually increase. And so I'm actually the asshole right now telling all the festivals, don't look at your sanitary. It doesn't matter how dirty or bad it is. Just don't invest in there. Invest rather in other areas. And so I'm the guy that, if you have bad toilets at festivals, that's me.
I mean, yeah, it's almost expected. As a festival goer myself, it is expected that the toilets are going to be bad at festivals. But that is interesting that you were able to use the data to actually show the customers where to invest in their customers and satisfaction.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So what I'm curious is, so I think you sold that company, right? So if I'm an event organizer who used to work directly with you, what am I doing now?
Well, you still use the same technology, but it's embedded in a big enterprise by now instead of we're going to as a vendor.
That's cool. So they're not high and dry. They're still using the same same software with basically a different vendor.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. So you told us a little bit about learning analytics that you started with Tableau, but can you go deeper with your journey of actually learning analytics? And then did you then move into data engineering and then eventually into software engineering, or were you always a software engineer? Because my understanding is that you actually helped build the Y42 platform, that you did a lot of hands-on full stack development, right? So I'm curious about the order in which you learned all of those different skills.
So as I said, I started out as a statistician, and there I learned, Stata, I learned SPSS, I use R, but I was rather that drag and drop SPSS guy for a very long time. And so in Stata, right, like, I don't know if you've ever used that. It's just, very basic commands to transform your data and so on. But when I really learned about data structure is, as I've said, when I had to use Tableau. And the reason why I chose Tableau is I've always been interested in data because A, I studied it, but B, it really like reflects my philosophy of life. And my purpose in life is to figure out the truth, to identify the truth, chasing after the truth. But at the same time, I also know that I will never find the truth. And the closest that I've ever always come to the truth or to understanding if there's a truth is through data. And so I was very obsessed about data. I wanted to see patterns and I want to analyze things and I want to see, right, like all the statistics like regression analysis, or you call it by now machine learning or unsupervised learning with
Yes.
K-means, whatever that is you call it nowadays. It's just pattern recognition at the end, and like with probability, whether or correlation in that case. And so, I tried then to find that pattern in projects in my free time. And most of the patterns, funnily, I could already see them with simple analytics by just like different group bys of metric and segmenting and like portraying it in visual ways, that I could already see the pattern without applying any analytics. Any complex statistics on top of that. And so that's why I fell in love with Tableau and I used it for my personal projects. And once I became good at it, I just applied on Upwork, become a freelancer, and started out my career while I was still in uni, building out Tableau dashboards. And then,
That's cool. You did the freelance thing. I like that.
Yes, exactly. And then I did that for a year after uni as well, while thinking of like I always wanted to be a founder as well, and because the main reason is I grew up in Vietnam for the first 8 years of my life, and then I moved to Germany. That's why you can hear this German accent right now. And so I moved to Germany at the age of 8, and I feel like I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I really need to prove something to myself. And that's why I think searching for the biggest challenge, which equals starting a company, is one of the biggest challenge.
Yes.
Like anybody can go through that process. And so that's why I wanted to start a company, and it took me a bit of time, but then I ideated, and then I also built out my my master's thesis around analyzing festivals, and then I use all of this tooling, and then I became a consultant to kind of kept myself an ongoing stream of money, so I can continue. And then at some point I decided I want to start my own company right now, and it was in 2016. And of course, I've analyzed festivals before for free for my master's thesis, and I built out all of these dashboards and use cases. And the first year I did it for free, and then suddenly they asked me in the second year, well, we liked what you did last time. It was a very manual work. Like, why? Like, can you do it again for me? And so that's why I turned that into a proper software. And at the time, I didn't know how to program, right? I would just I had enough of cash flow from these festivals that I could hire two freelancers, or we call them working student in Germany, where they're students, but they can work for 20 hours, and it's there's a lot of tax benefits hiring working students. And so I hired.
Is it like an internship? We call it internship in the United
Yeah,
States.
you can call it like that. Yeah, but they're still effectively student. They don't work full time. They can only work for like max 20 hours a week.
Yep.
And so I would always get like one person, and those are like software engineers, like our computer scientists students, and they would sit next to me and they would teach me how to code. And so I would learn to code 6 hours a day, and at night I would code 6 hours to build the first version. But pretty much the first 6 months, all my code was throwaway code. Like even the students were saying, "Man, like no, that doesn't work. We cannot use it." And so I learned it for 12 months. It was really a painful process of trying to code the first version. But the good thing is we kind of had the content already, right? Like we had this, we knew the kind of analysis we want to do. And so, yeah, it was just a matter of time to just productize that. And then I became good also after a year, right? Like I know it's just a year, but it was obsession. It was like 12 hours coding every single day. And it's not, and I didn't stop with it. And so, and I think I became decently good at programming. I think, and my real breakthrough, I know it sounds super simple, but what was when I actually understood object-oriented programming. And that was my breakthrough. And then my second breakthrough was when I understood event streams and event streams in the front end and in the back end, right? Like in the front end using libraries like RxJS is extremely complex. You have to like manage the streams of data in the front end. And so, yeah, it was a fun time, and I coded for a long time. I coded throughout my entire first company, all the way to Y42 for the first 2 years. And so I rather approach the data problem now from an angle of a software engineer than a classical data engineer, so to say. Yeah, sorry, that was a very long answer, but I hope I could.
No, that's really cool. So one of my key takeaways from what you talked about there that I think the audience would really like to hear, because in this audience there's a lot of beginning data engineers and beginning software developers. It really only takes a year of focused effort to learn a skill like that. If you're doing it every day and you have your hands on a project, after 1 year you can become very much of at least a better than 60 to 70% of the people out there who have just only dipped their toes in the water. So I think that's encouraging to hear. People think it takes forever or an entire lifetime. Obviously, you just get better the older you become and the longer you've been doing it. But 1 year is a really great timeline. What type of
I wouldn't say so. I have to disagree a little bit here. I think you can get the basics in 1 year and it helps you. But nowadays, especially with ChatGPT, right, like being a junior software engineer is going to be very hard out there, because like you're not going to be much better than ChatGPT. That's also 60, 70, 80% there, right? We're in a business right now of creating SLOs of 99.99%. Like, you expect everything to work on that level of precision. And to get to that level, I think you have to skill up. And so I don't want to paint a wrong and romantic picture here. It's hard, and you have to stand out. You have to become amongst you have to get to stability of 99.99%. Like that's what the world expects right now. So it's not as easy as you portrayed. Sorry to.
Okay, no, I mean, hey, that's what we're here for. We're here to dialogue and talk about it and give our audience the best information. Certainly you won't be the most valuable developer after a year, but you'll be able to at least start building those projects to help yourself stand out.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we have a question coming in from YouTube. And this question is really about how to make yourself stand out. It says, given the expertise that you guys have, what kind of projects do you suggest for early career aspirants to have on their profile? Is it a simple project using multiple tools for ETL? If you could just follow up in the chat, Amsri, if you could just follow up with what area of focus, what if it's like data engineering, I think is because you said ETL. So we'll start answering the question from data engineering. But if you're thinking like no software engineering or something like that, we could change our answer a little bit. But do you want to take a stab at this one first, and then I'll give my comments?
Sure. So the first project that I built, as I've said before, was using Tableau. And I think it's important to have something end-to-end. Then you see the problem end-to-end as well. So try to come up with a project and think of the end product, the end picture that you want to accomplish, and then work your way backwards. And I think tooling-wise, it was different times when I started. It was like, I started 10 years ago, and at the time there was no DBT. Like Redshift, I think just came out a year before or two. And so I use Alteryx for when I started.
Me too. I'm a huge Alteryx guy. I still use it to this day, like at least 5 to 10 hours a week.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I used, Alteryx and then Tableau, the classical stack back in the days, but I never built out projects and put it out there. Like I just used it to sharpen my skill. And I think that's rather the mentality that you should have. Like, I don't think anybody will look at your open source GitHub project necessarily. Maybe I'm wrong by now, but I mean, back in the days, Git wasn't even a thing for Alteryx, or Tableau was still not a thing. So yeah, it's hard to get recognition on those earlier projects. But I think certainly it's better to have at least some portfolio than nothing if you're trying to apply for a job. But
Sure.
yeah, that's my
So,
answer.
so my take is a little bit different. I do encourage people to have a portfolio, to have a GitHub repository, and have a really nice README in their GitHub repository, because at least that's what people are going to look at. And the reason why I encourage them to do that, especially for very junior people, is so that they can have their GitHub on their resume, like towards the top, like in their contact information. Like, here's my name, my phone number, my email address, and boom, there's my GitHub. And within your GitHub, if you've done other projects outside of GitHub, like your Tableau public profile, just link it somewhere in like very clear in your GitHub so they can see your Tableau public profile. I was very much like you. I did projects to learn. I was very much like obsessed with learning about data for since like 2008. I've been completely obsessed with it, and I spend a lot of my free time just learning new tools all the time, and it never stops. And for 98% of that time, I never shared any of my projects. It was all for personal learning and to make myself a better consultant, or back in the day, a better employee. But now I've started sharing my projects publicly. It does help with visibility and getting your name out there. And I think especially for junior people nowadays, it is becoming the thing to do. Just being slightly active on LinkedIn. You don't have to post every day, but when you do a project, share it so you get your name out there a little bit. Because employers very often don't hire from a stack of resumes. They hire from someone that they've seen online posting about stuff. Like, they're going to think, who do I know that does this? And if they can think like, oh, I saw someone that did a project in that space, that's going to be an advantage. And then specifically, he's asking what kind of projects. So, I mean, find data that you find is interesting. The world doesn't need another sports dashboard because that's what everyone does. But if that's your thing and you like baseball, then like you could go find a great baseball data set. Or if you like movies, you could find a great movies data set. I recently did a project where I covered my favorite band, which is not like a very popular band, but I refer to them as the greatest rock band in America. The fact is, nobody cares about my dashboard. Like even though I have some notoriety, I guess, literally nobody cares about my dashboard. I made it for me because I was interested in the data. And I was also using it to learn some new tools. I used it to learn the Airbyte no-code connector builder. I used it to learn the Y42 platform. And ultimately, the payoff for me was seeing the data in Tableau. I wasn't learning anything in Tableau. I was already an expert there. But there was some payoff of seeing the concert history of my favorite band in Tableau. So I would just put the question back on you, Amsri, like, what do you want to know? And then do a project on that. Like, here's another example. Like, if you wear a Fitbit on your wrist, their dashboard sucks in the app. Like, it's just terrible. It doesn't tell you anything. Download your Fitbit data. You download a CSV and make a better dashboard. Or do something with the weather API. Definitely just find a project, get it out there. And yes, ETL, the whole thing, dashboard, do it all. Let's see. We're getting not very many questions. So there's a bunch of people watching on LinkedIn. It looks like there's a few on LinkedIn. There's 3 on YouTube. So I'm going to keep asking questions, and everyone else get your questions teed up here so we have more to talk about. So spreadsheets, the big elephant in the room. So every CEO loves their spreadsheets because it's just quick and easy. So at Y42, first of all, what BI tool do you guys use and love at Y42, and how much does spreadsheets play a role in your process, if at all?
I mean, spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. I use it maybe not every day, but certainly once a week. And there are just certain things you cannot model. Like you want to model the world, right? Like whatever we build right now in the digital world, it's just we're trying to model the processes and the truth of the world, whether it's a data pipeline or whether, some ideas. And I think it's a quick and dirty tool, but it's also a great tool to productionize certain models, especially for the finance team. So the finance team works inside spreadsheets, but they also use Y42 to build out more robust data pipeline. But yeah, it's a combination of both for the finance team. For me, I use it to write down ideas. If I have to like mock something in my head, I use spreadsheets a lot. And so for us, the type of BI tools that we're leveraging within Y42 is Hex. You have, certainly you might have heard of Hex, or certainly have heard of Hex. It's basically this notebook that you can use to build out and publish apps, and it's like like everything. It's a DAG, and you can execute SQL or Python in that DAG, and it's just a notebook style. So our operations team used that. Like obviously, our ops team used Y42 to build out the core data pipeline, but the last mile on top is being used by Hex. But these apps, they are being curated by the data team and released to the whole company to consume. But the rest of the company cannot self-service on that data. And so there's a second stream, which is we have a self-hosted database where any team can have access to our transactional database and others, SaaS tools that we connect to. Well, they can hook it on top of the pipelines that we build within Y42. And then you can just use Metabase to do self-service. We started out jokingly saying it's Shadow BI, but funnily, Metabase has been introduced by our head of engineering, so it's more non-Shadow BI.
Cool.
Sorry.
Is it connected to you guys like BigQuery, right? Or what is Metabase?
We use Snowflake by now.
What is it?
We use Snowflake by now.
Okay. So I don't know if you observed the same thing. One of the things I noticed when I was prototyping with Metabase is that my Snowflake bill, even if I never logged into Metabase, it went up by like $12 a day, which is like a couple $1,000s a year, just for it to like just tell Snowflake it was still alive. Like, have you guys seen anything like that or noticed it, or no, not yet?
Well, I'm not too deep into looking at the bill.
Okay. Well, for me, it's my personal Snowflake account and it's on my credit card. So I kind of I'm constantly making sure I'm not accidentally spending like $200 in a month. I'm sure your Snowflake bill is way more than that, but I like my Snowflake bill to be $30 to $40 a month because it's only for proof of concepts for YouTube and stuff like that. And when I was doing Metabase, I was kind of just like, oh man, what happened here? Apparently, that's common. When I reached out to a few other people, they were like, yep, that's what happens. I mean, enterprises would never blink an eye. It's like $10 a day. Like they're like, okay, who cares? But for me on my personal credit card, I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I wish I would care more, but unfortunately, I can make other decisions that have more leverage than $10 a day. And so, but I'm, as I told you before, I grew up in Vietnam, right? Like $10 a day is a lot of money. So if I had that time, I would like chase after every single $10 there is, but unfortunately don't have that time.
Yeah. So what type of KPIs are you looking at as the CEO of Y42? Like what is top of mind for you data wise? And when you wake up in the morning, what do you want to see as far as your numbers and stuff like that?
Funnily, you would think that, we are at the stage right now where we have like these super great dashboards all combined, and we're a data company first and foremost. So we should have, a very clean setup. But funnily, I get it from different sources. So if I want to get product usage, like that's something I'm looking at a lot. like what kind of customer logs in at what time, how long have they been using the platform, what's the NPS, like on a particular, and also I want to see the jobs that failed, right? Like luckily it doesn't happen that often, but we're trying to become the 99.99% solution out there. And so it means 1 out of 1,000 job can fail at max. And so I want to trace after that. If I see suddenly, hey, overnight there are 5 jobs that fail, 5 out of 1,000 jobs that fail on our platform, right? Like it's code red basically for us. And so I look at the product usage, I look at the pipeline health, how the structure is performing, and then I get a lot of KPIs coming from Datadog, because that's for the overall, like the cluster health, whether we need to auto scale more. And so it all comes from different system in this case. And then we get another one, whereas the go-to-market team, we're still a lean go-to-market, and that's why we don't have a dedicated team building out data pipelines. And obviously everybody in the go-to-market can use Y42 just because they sell it there, right? But they're just happy with like, hey, I have my dashboard in Salesforce and it does the job. So there's no need right now to get it out of Salesforce yet. And but we are in the process right now of it's no longer enough. We have to combine it and enrich it. And so we're going to start the ELT process soon to extract the data from Salesforce with Y42 and enrich it and combine it. And so I get basically reporting once a week on the health of the business, on the pipeline, the quality, the opportunities, the number of customers that we close, and consequently also our ARR and so on. Every second, like on a monthly base, then I get like those numbers like burn multiple, CAC, like the classic VC like SaaS-based numbers that I look at. So once a month, I look at this global. And so every day, as I'm still running the product and the engineering team, I look at the product usage. I look at the infrastructure, product usage again coming from Y42 with RudderStack, and then Datadog I looked at, and then right now data from Salesforce, but that's soon to be piped through Y42 as well. And then I look at the financial numbers once a month, which is being done in Google Sheets, aggregated up, CAC, burn multiple, etc. And then there's HR, and they also build the dashboards with Y42 because we kind of dog fooding using our own tool. And so I get also HR numbers based on within Y42 as well.
Makes sense. So is there a data role in Y42 that's someone who's just responsible for like, the metabase and reports like this? And if not, are you thinking about going in that direction to consolidate all of these metrics into like Snowflake and metabase? Or are you just like, no, we're good right now, kind of stitching it together because we're a startup, we're bootstrapping, and like it's just fine how it is? I'm kind of curious your take on that.
I think I don't want to over-engineer if it's not needed. So and it's hard to say. Like we're in a very special position, right? I mean, we build a data engineering tool, we build an ELT tool. So naturally, everybody in the company knows how to operate and to use it. And so we don't need to have like one person that builds the data pipeline, and that's the only person who knows how to operate things. It's like one person building the data pipeline, then everybody else kind of self-service themselves and goes in there. But there's one person responsible for it, like mainly like the overall architect. But everybody can go in and understands immediately, okay, this is how, like that's our, like every single person in our, like not every single, but I would say 70% of the people in this company understand our database structure, like of our transactional databases.
Very cool.
So it's easy for us to operate like this, but I don't think that's normal for most of the companies.
That's not normal at all. You almost never see that.
Yes.
So I had a customer say, it was like 2 weeks ago, it was like, well, when I was like, so what type of database is your BI team using? They're like, well, what do you mean database? Like we have AWS, is that a database? And I was like, oh, okay. So, all right. So let's back up here. Maybe you should introduce me to your IT department because, AWS is not a database. So that's cool that you guys actually have that very high level of competency with across your employees. Very
And yeah,
unusual, actually.
yeah, very unusual. And that's why I don't think it's a good example how we do things. And as a fun fact, we're releasing a new product, an analytics layer right now in Y42, and that's being built by Y42 as the backend.
Cool.
So we are extracting our data from our transaction database using CDC, transform that, batch that, like refresh it once an hour. The whole pipeline runs for 7 minutes right now in total. Then we get that data and we expose that data as APIs. We don't use any frameworks for that. We use just a thin API layer. Like we don't use KubeDev or anything. We just use our own API, connect on top of BigQuery. In this case, we run on BigQuery, and then we display that information, like the jobs, how often does it run, how often did it fail, like for our own customers within Y42. So we use Y42 to build a product that's being displayed within Y42. And so
That's
this
awesome.
pipeline is very important to us. And that's why we put more rigor in there. But yeah, this pipeline is also one of our main data pipeline, for product usage, for billing as the base of our billing. Like when we build our customers, that's exactly the base of data. And so, and our internal customer success team is also using that data. So basically we have 3 different parties looking at that data to validate whether it's correct. It's the internal team, it's the customer themselves. If they say, hey, that doesn't look correct, then we have to fix that. And it's the finance team for the billing. And that's why we wanted to build it that way, that it enforces us to have really high data quality that we expose to any party within the company. And so that's why we treat it more with a stronger rigor, and we have our software engineers look at even on this pipeline to see whether everything is correct or not.
So one of the things I learned at Coalesce is that one of the largest DBT projects in the world is from DBT Labs themselves, because most of their employees, or at least a very large percentage of their employees, are trained on how to use DBT and are building their own models. I'm curious, at Y42, even though you mentioned that most of your employees are familiar with the database structure, how many of them are using Y42 to build production-ready data pipelines, or to answer their own questions, or maybe like Slack them a KPI, or like any cool feature of Y42? How many of the employees are capable of doing like that DBT piece, and then really taking like their platform usage to the next level?
So more than half of our team are product and engineers, and they don't have time to build that, right? Like they need to build the product, and so don't even use Y42 to build anything. That's not your job. And of course, they build Y42, so they know it on a meta level how to use the product. But then we have the operations team, the customer success team, and the growth team. And I think it's rather interesting, how are they using it there? And the customer success team, they're using it, of course, to build out the data pipeline, to analyze the customer. That's also our core pipeline that we then expose to our customers, external customers. And so they know how to build production-ready data pipeline using Y42 or /DBT in this case, because we run DBT also under the hood. And so the ops team, it's the same. They know, because the finance team also, they need to do work with that. So I would say, the growth team, right? Like they build demos like there's no tomorrow, right? So they need to know how to, and they build their own reporting with that as well, which is another separate data pipeline.
So one of the things that I'm thinking about is like self-service analytics, and my experience with Alteryx being like, so I was the Alteryx doctor at many companies. That was kind of like my role for many years of consulting, was end user support in Alteryx. And of course, Alteryx markets themselves as a business user tool. They don't market themselves as an ETL tool, even though they really are. But when you call them an ETL tool, they say, no, we're not that. We're a business user data preparation tool. Like that's something different. But where I'm going with this is when you put Alteryx in the hands of business users, you get a different result than you get when you put Alteryx in the hands of a data engineer, where it's an extremely powerful tool for a data engineer. And it might even be like a little bit of a dangerous tool in the hand of a business user, because what happens is they build a pipeline that works, but maybe it's not optimized or it's very messy. But then that pipeline inevitably becomes mission critical to the organization. So when it goes down, like all these red alerts go up, but the pipeline never was production ready to begin with. So what is your thought on, like, in a DBT world or a Y42 world, kind of rolling that out to business users, or should this really be more in the hands of data engineers? And I know we have this new term, analytics engineer, which is like a business user who knows SQL, but where do you kind of think about the right fit for DBT and Y42 and what that persona is, the target persona?
Yeah, I used to build a no-code, low-code data tool. And so I think enabling people that don't have anything else is extremely valuable to build up. Like we serve, founders back in the days that don't have any engineering skill, but they still have to analyze their business somehow. So I think those kind of tools have a lot of value. Like there are people that learn how to build data pipelines based on of these tools. Like there are some people using our no-code, low-code tool in order to learn how data structure works. Same how I use Tableau, which is also just self-service analytics, how to learn data structure, how that works under the hood. So for that sake of upskilling people, I think these tools are great, but to rely on them to build really scalable infrastructure, I doubt that it works well over a long period of time. It can work for a while, but then you really need to productionize it, switch it out, build it from scratch, build it really well. But it's similar. A similar process that I see is, right now I'm not a Figma expert, right? But I want to express myself in Figma. And so I want to drag and drop something. I want to build something. And then I hand it over to a professional, be it an analytics engineer or data engineer, and like, hey, please clean it up. And so there needs to be some processes there. If I do something, right, I should do it in my separate branch. I should have like my own environment. I should do a pull request and then people refactor it. So I believe in that collaboration. I believe in upskilling people if they have the will and the time. I also believe in last mile self-service analytics, which is, it's just the last 5%. Whether that should happen in Y42 or DBT is the other question, or whether that should happen in the BI layer itself, where you calculate a metric and you just, like do it yourself with some simple calculations, like in Tableau or by now, right, in Looker or. So I believe in it, but I want to highlight that there are limitations. And those limitations, if I really want something to be accurate 99.99% of the time, then I want to have the software engineering mindset there. I want to have like proper testing, unit tests, anomaly detection, monitoring, pull requests. Like I want that rigor. And only with that rigor, we get like mission critical pipeline. They cannot fail. The SLO must be 99.99%. And then I would treat it very differently. And I think getting to 99.99% is much harder than getting to just 99%. So if you have some pipeline where you accept, hey, it's just 99% is enough, then I believe that self-service, like 79 to like 97 or up to 99%, I believe self-service analytics actually still works. But anything above that, I think analytics/data engineers have to have their hands in the game to drive up that level of rigor.
Totally. So before DBT and Y42, the way that I used to do kind of database design was we would have a curated schema in Snowflake or whatever database that was kind of managed by IT. And then we would have a schema for each business department called end user zone. So it would be like EUZ underscore whatever the department name was. And that was like the playground for the business users to be able to work in Snowflake, be able to publish their Alteryx targets to Snowflake. And then with the agreement that we would review the end user zone once a quarter, and anything that seemed like it was critical to run the business, then we would pull it back into the curated schema. So that was before DBT, and now with DBT, we have this great concept of development environments, right? So you can have your environment in classic DBT development, it would be like your schema with DBT underscore your first name or your whatever your name. And in Y42, your development environment, of course, is the name of your branch in GitLab or GitHub, which I think that's just an amazing concept, how you simplified it. And instead of a quarterly review on is this business critical, and by the way, those quarterly reviews never happen, and then the stuff lives in the end user zone forever. But now with DBT and Y42, you actually have a process, a change control process, a pull request or merge request process, where you could do a design review, where the business user can say, I built this in DBT, or I built this in Y42. I want it to go to production. And then they can sit down with like a real data engineer and review it and have a conversation about it, of whether or not it's ready to go to production. And I love this way of working so much better, because you don't get stuff that's just stuck in the end user zone forever and never IT certified. And it upskills people that much faster.
100%,
So
and I think AI is adding a lot to that. So right now you have ChatGPT that can write you, SQL as accurate as 80 or 90%, and so that's going to help you upskill even faster in the process. And I think and that's also with the philosophy that I try to embed in Y42, right? I like what we're trying to go after is getting production ready data pipeline. 99.99% high quality data and reliable. But at the same time, we want to upskill people to get there. So we try to teach people how to use Git with Y42, like GitHub Desktop. So we build a UI for Git that's really simple to use, and then people can understand, that's how. But for those that know Git very well, there's still the Git terminal. Please, help yourself. And so
yeah,
I feel that having and it's such a difficult paradigm to like how much should I focus on really high quality hardcore engineering work so my data pipeline is production ready versus how much do I enable people to have the chance to participate, to upskill, to understand what's going on. And yeah, we're trying to drive that duality in ways that teaches people how to build those production ready data pipelines. And hopefully we succeed with this concept, just because that's how you and I, how we learn to use data in the first place, by using these tools. And we learn with these simple drag and drop tools like Alteryx. And over time now we embed all of these software engineering best practices in our tooling. And I hope I can find that dance where somebody would learn Y42 and then get the same excitement and feeling that I had when I first learned Tableau. But we push them even further than what I was able to just learn with Tableau, to even more best practices that enables those reliable data pipelines.
absolutely. So what do you think the future is for the role of data engineering and analytics in light of AI? Do you think that it's going to be a dying field, or do you think it's just going to enable us to go faster and provide more value?
So far, I think it's just, I'm very confident it's just to enable us to go faster. Because, I'm sorry if I annoy everybody now by always saying 99.99%, but it's the same thing. And like, we cannot trust a system blindly if it doesn't provide us that level of accuracy. And right now AI can provide us maybe 60, 70, 80, 90% at max accuracy. That's far away from the envisioned 99.99. And why am I so obsessed about this number? Well, the world is just very complex, and there are a lot of processes, and each step, right, if you don't get like this high level of accuracy, it would just compound so fast that the pipeline will just fail at some point. And so you cannot be, this part of the process is only 99%, and then the next part is only 99, and then the next part, well, it's just going to compound after 10 steps. Like it's already 10% failure rate if you run it, once a day. And that's why AI, like human, which I think is such a phenomenon, that we humans, we run on like one rice bowl a day, but we are able to like grasp so much complexity and bring so much context with like so little energy that we need to be fed. And then we can use that to, like, after a lot of iterations, so like push it up the accuracy. And so while AI is not able to provide that level of accuracy, and I'm talking high level of accuracy, then it cannot be treated as a black box. And while it's cannot be treated as a black box, it always needs to be an experienced human in the loop, using and leveraging that tool, to push it up. So I don't see software engineering nor data engineering going anywhere anytime soon. But who knows? Like the field, works, like, develops so fast. If we really have artificial general intelligence, then it might go much faster than we have singularity. So the answer is I don't know, but I don't.
Yeah, that's a very cool take on it, though. I love the 99.99% thing, because my experience working with ChatGPT, and I use it every single day to write Python snippets for me, or refactor SQL, or just ask it questions about AWS, things that I don't know. I use it every single day, but it is only like 80% accurate. And if I'm asking it to, let's just give an example. I'm going to tell ChatGPT, hey, I want you to use the Google Sheets API to loop over a list of Google Sheets workbooks and union them together and then load them into Snowflake. There is like a 5% chance that it's going to get that right the first time with no errors. It's going to get me so fast. It's going to save me 8 hours of work. But it's not going to get it right the first time. So yeah, we don't know how long until it does get it right, everything right the first time, that 99%. But yeah, right now I would say it's 80%, 85% on simple questions, but some more complex projects, it's like way closer to zero.
Yeah, complex means you just have more steps in between, and each step is just 80%, 90%, and then it just compounds. Call the Google Sheets API, one step, union them, the next step, and then load them to Snowflake. It's just so much. You're training basically like all of these processes that only have 80, 90% accuracy, and it just compounds down to zero. Like it's just not accurate. And the world just has not just 5 simple steps. It's like millions of steps. That's why everything is a graph, everything is a deck, and everything, we software and like having trees. And I really realized that in software engineering, at the end of the day, it all comes down to graphs and trees, and whether it's software or data engineering. And so you have so many steps, and it can feel at so many points.
Totally. So I think the skill set is just changing from being really good at using Google to getting really good at using ChatGPT, and not just saying like, here's my full requirement, but you break those requirements up into steps, get step 1 working. Okay. Then give ChatGPT your next requirement. But I found that if you're really good at using ChatGPT, it can make you move so fast. You can get so much more done for your clients. You can say yes to more projects. You can take on more stuff at once. But I have in no way have had any concern that it's going to replace me anytime soon. The classic joke that some of me and my colleagues always use when customers ask us questions, we don't say this to the customer, but what we say amongst ourselves, like, hey, let me Google that for you, because 99% of what clients ask is stuff that they could have just Googled and figured out themselves. And in fact, everything that I know about data engineering, I've learned through YouTube and Googling it and just being curious and finding out the answers. But most business people, they don't care. They just want to ask somebody. They just want it done for them. So that's not the personality type of most people out there. So if people weren't Googling it before, they're certainly not going to go to ChatGPT and have ChatGPT write the program for them. They're still going to come to us and say, hey, I need a piece of software that does this, or I need a data pipeline that does this. I don't see, at least in the next 5 years, ChatGPT enabling a business user to not ask a data engineer to do stuff for them, basically.
I mean, it comes down to how accurate do you get it. If you have an experience that ChatGPT can give you a 99.99% accurate answer, then yes, you bypass the middleman. But while it's only 90%, it's too dangerous. So you have to put somebody in between, right? And that's why also in finance, like every number has to be correct. And that's why you have a human in the loop, and you don't necessarily trust it's just an automated data pipeline that generates these financial numbers. You always have a human in the loop looking over Google Sheets or like your spreadsheets and say, okay, that's correct. I validated that. That's correct. I validated that. And that's again what I think is so interesting about like the capabilities of us human to operate with such little energy and get so much context and like drive up this quality. Our reasoning. I'm very fascinated by human beings.
Yeah. It's hard to know how fast technology will move because everyone was so surprised by ChatGPT when it came out in November 2022. I think it was so earth shattering. But when I listened to the keynote from the Snowflake conference this year, the CEO was saying that, we're not too far away from a time where a business user will be able to log into Snowflake and type into a prompt, describe an app that they want to build. And that app will become built in Snowflake, in Snowpark container services. And boom, they just magically have an end-to-end app. I think we are like light years away from that. Maybe at 15 years, I at least 15, 20 years away from that level of technology. But again, you never know. We're moving faster and faster and faster and faster. I mean, the light bulb was only invented like 150 years ago or something, and here we are with ChatGPT. So who knows how fast it'll come? But I just feel like that level of amazingness is just not even on the table right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't want to be, being pessimistic. Like I'm a founder. I try to be as optimistic about things, and I am overly optimistic. But I just don't see what you describe happening anytime soon either. Like not in the next 10 years, like at least.
Yeah. So, any questions for me before we wrap up?
Yes. So, Jeff, in your job, what's your absolute favorite part in your day to day when you're working, with your clients, when you're working with data? Like, what's the one thing that really makes your heart skip a beat? And I know it's about learning new things, and I think you get that rush out of that. But like, can you tell me, like what activities is really fun for you?
The time passes the fastest when I'm actually building pipelines. I love building data pipelines, and I love the wow that it gives the customer when you present them the dashboard on the tail end of it. One of my greatest skill sets and greatest values as a consultant is that I am really good at collecting business requirements and understanding what the business needs and understanding the value that it drives. But that comes so natural to me that it's like not even really a challenge. So like we can have a few meetings and I'm like, all right, let me just go play with the data now. Let me prototype something for you. We don't even need to spend a lot of time gathering requirements, but I just really love building pipelines in DBT. It's so cheesy, but I enjoy it. So
Yeah, that's very great to hear. So, what's then your biggest challenge doing that on a day-to-day basis? Like, what's the thing that you're like, oh man, I wish it would be much easier to do that?
what is the biggest challenge? So one thing is that oftentimes getting the data into Snowflake, there's a connector here, a connector there with one company or another company, but there's really no company that does them all or does it easily. Like everyone knows that Fivetran is the easiest to use, but it's also has like the most well-known pricing problem in the industry. And they have a very limited number of connectors, like 100 plus, maybe close. I'm not sure. Maybe it's close to 200. I'm not sure, but a lot of times the data that I'm after, there is no connector for it. So I think that this whole problem of lack of one platform that has all the connectors and that the data shows up in Snowflake the way you want it to show up in Snowflake, I think we're coming to the end of that in like the next year or two. I think that's just going to be solved. like very soon. I mean, so many vendors are after this space right now, and they're all competing against each other. So this, I do see that challenge going away very quickly. Also, so we are at time here, but I'll just want to finish answering the question. Another challenge that I find is teaching DBT to others who haven't heard of it before, because at all of my clients, they're coming into DBT for the first time. I'm recommending DBT to them, and it's so hard for them to get up to speed on it, because it's just like, you kind of need to go through the training. You kind of need to like just spend like that weekend or whatever and go through the training. But getting clients up to speed on DBT, especially with the whole environment concept, is one of the hardest things. And yes, Y42 solves that problem beautifully. Training people on Git, like if people, you can't train someone on Git, they have to want to learn it. They want to have to spend a couple evenings on YouTube, like researching how to use Git. And if they don't have that drive and desire to learn how to use Git, they're never going to learn it. But again, like DBT Cloud has abstracted that nicely. Y42 has abstracted that nicely. If anyone from DBT Cloud is listening here, you guys do need that CLI interface as well, because like I can't even stash a change. Like, oh, I was accidentally working on the wrong branch. I literally have to copy and paste it to my desktop, throw the branch away, and start a new one, then copy and paste it back in. So yeah, I like that Y42 has a stash button. I like that Y42 has the CLI feature as well for Git. So
I mean, we shameless plug, but it's one of my favorite technology ever. We built the fastest Git engine in the browser using WebAssembly, and so it's native Git that runs, and not like Git running on some remote browser where you have to build out APIs to get and execute this command on a remote engine that runs. And so it runs on your browser, and then because of that, you can plug and play a VS Code on top of that as well with your extensions. And sorry to advertise that.
No, I mean, this is cool. So why don't you end with like the 60-second elevator pitch for Y42? I'll give a 30-second elevator pitch for gmdata.co, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yes. Okay, Y42 is a turnkey data orchestration platform with built-in observability. And the tagline is we enable bad data prevention rather than cure. And so in a nutshell, we are a declarative asset-based orchestrator that you can use to ingest data. We run Airbyte, we run CData, we run Fivetran. You can ingest data. You can then transform data using DBT. Y42 runs DBT, and then also Python to automate further parts of your pipeline. We have embedded data quality and anomaly detection alongside the entire pipeline. And the real magic of Y42 is the GitOps layer for data. So we version control code and data together. So we streamline your environment management. We cut down your waiting time, CI pipelines, and your data warehouse costs by 30 to 60%, because you don't have to recompute the same tables and their downstream dependencies over and over again. And because we build out these different versions, we can embed audit gates such as assertion tests, anomaly detection, unit tests, pull requests, CI, and so on. And so we're like Gandalf, bad data you shall not pass. In a nutshell, we help you build very robust data pipeline, streamline workflow, and ensure that bad data never goes live. Over to you, Jeff.
Beautiful. So my favorite thing that I'm working on nowadays with clients is helping them control their Snowflake costs. I guarantee that I can save them at least 25% on their Snowflake bill. Otherwise, they don't have to pay my fee. If they don't save at least what my fee costs, I will refund them that portion of the fee. So risk-free, contact me. I can help you save 25% on your, not just Snowflake, but let's say cloud data stack. So Snowflake plus data loading. And we could work together and save a ton of money. So that's that.
Jeff is one of the best people I know. So everybody, that's your man.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We're going to wrap up. See you soon. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.